Hi everybody, this is Wes. It's Tuesday at noon and this is your midday meditation from Westminster. I'm going to read Mark chapter 1 verses 40 through 45 and part of the scripture we read this last Sunday in worship. This is early in Jesus' ministry when he encounters a leper. A leper came to Jesus begging him, and kneeling he said to him, "If you choose, you can make me clean." Moved with pity, Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him, and said to him, "I do choose, be made clean." Immediately the leprosy left him, and he was made clean. After sternly warning him, he sent him away at once, saying to him, "See that you say nothing to anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest, and offer for your cleansing what Moses commanded, as a testimony to them." But he went out and began to proclaim it freely and to spread the word, so that Jesus could no longer go into a town openly, but stayed out in the country, and people came to him from every quarter. So I love this scene of the leper coming to Jesus, kneeling and saying to Jesus, "If you choose, you can make me clean." And Jesus, full of pity for the man, stretched out his hand and said to him, "I do choose, be made clean." And I just thought this was such strange language. I don't remember seeing this kind of language in any other healing story from the Gospels. It's so interesting and unique. You know, when my when my children were small, sometimes they would ask a permission from, say, Shelby, my wife, and sometimes they'd put it like this. For instance, if one of my children said wanted to go outside, she would say, "Mom, can I go outside?" And Shelby would say to her, "I don't know, can you?" The goal, of course, was to help my children understand the difference between can and will. The appropriate question was, or I should say can and may. The appropriate question was, may I go outside? Because they were asking permission. Permission, may connotes permission, connotes an act of the will, either from the one who has authority over you, like a mother, or of yourself. We all have a will. And whereas can, when you ask can, it connotes a power or ability. Can I go outside? Maybe I'm ill, or the door won't open, and maybe that's prohibiting me from going outside, and so I don't have the power to go outside. And so there's a difference between may and can when you ask something. I enjoy how this leper says, "If you choose, you can make me clean." And so what he's saying is, I know you have the ability, I know you can make me clean. That's been demonstrated by your ministry so far, and apparently the word had gotten out about what Jesus could do. And so the leper recognizes that Jesus can do it. He has the ability. The only question is going to be, will Jesus do it? Does he have the will to make me clean? He says, if you choose, you can make me clean. Jesus responds, I do choose. I do choose to use my will in this way to make you clean. And therefore it's an act of will, and Jesus cleanses the leper according to this story from Mark. As individuals, we have tremendous power, don't we? We have this personal agency. where we can make decisions about our lives and about the lives of our community as we are bound together in various public entities, towns and counties and the nation. Especially in America, we have this tremendous personal agency because we have so much freedom. We have this freedom to make choices. The struggle usually comes down to the will. It's not can we do something, can we get something done, but will we? Do we have the will? For instance, on an individual level, I have the power to maintain some health in my life. I have that power because I have all kinds of choices. We have grocery stores that have nutritious food. We have fairly clean air where we can get out and get some exercise, whether it be a walk or a bicycle ride. We have medical facilities and medical care. I can get my yearly checkup. So there's a lot of things that I can do. I have the power to maintain some physical as well as some mental and spiritual health. Because I have all these choices available to me. And in regard to spiritual health, I have a church available to me, a church body and people who care. And so we have all these resources. We have the power and the ability to be healthy. The question is, do I have the will to be healthy? Do I have the will to exercise? Do I have the will to eat properly? Do I have the will to maintain good relationships, to be in a community of faith, and to be in other communities where I can have relationships? Do I have the will to be generous? Because that is so life affirming. Do I have the will to be kind? Do I have the will to be content? These are all things that we have to make decisions about. We have the capability to do them, but do we? And that's where the struggle usually is, right? Especially now in the COVID, when most of us would just rather sit in front of the TV and eat pizza and drink beer because we can't get out much and life is difficult. But do we have the will to make better choices? And this is true with society also. We have the power and the resources to create better and more equal outcomes economically in this nation, but we don't. We lack the will. We have certainly the capability to reduce gun violence by reducing the amount of guns in our society. We have that capability, but we don't have the political will. We certainly have, we're the richest nation on earth. We certainly have the resources to make education, college cheaper. We have the resources to make daycare cheaper, so it's less of an economic strain on young families. We have all these resources. We have resources to make medical care more affordable and more expansive. But do we have the will to do these things? Often we don't. The big problem is homelessness. Do we have the ability to reduce homelessness? Do we have the will? Back in, I remember my father telling me in the 50s when he was just a laborer and he was pretty poor between jobs. But, back in those days, it's never been easy to be poor, but I think it was easier to be poor just after the war when there was this concerted effort in this nation, speaking of World War II, this concerted effort to lift as many boats as possible with this rising tide of economic prosperity, and really an intentional effort to create more equity. And he talks about when he was between jobs or when he didn't have a lot of money, there are always these places in urban centers and also in towns where you had street retail, but above that retail you had 2 or 3 stories perhaps of very modest housing. It was just an apartment, usually didn't have a restroom in it, might have had 1 or 2 restrooms on the floor, Maybe there was a phone down the hall. You didn't need the first and last rents. You didn't need a credit check. You just paid you didn't need a credit card. You didn't need credit. You just paid your money and you got a place to stay for the week. And it was pretty inexpensive. Now, our urban centers don't have this kind of housing, this kind of cheap housing that is easy to get into. Now, we expect a return on investment in our housing, so that if a block gets developed, we usually have street retail, but then it's 4 or 5 stories of beautiful apartments, expensive apartments. And so back in those days, we didn't have as much affordable housing as we had housing that was affordable. And so now, if you're between jobs, or if your life is economically taking a turn for the worse, often you are out on the street just because it's so hard to get into housing. Excuse me. And so, where was I? But do we have the will to create more affordable housing? Do we have the will to change the way we do things? So this is getting very long, but I want to just bring up a great book called Thinking in Bets. And this is Making Smarter Decisions When You Don't Have All the Facts, written by Annie Dillard. And she talks about flexing your will, flexing that muscle of decision making and making good decisions by doing something called back casting. And that is, she says, when it comes to advanced thinking, standing at the end and looking backward is more effective than looking forward from the beginning. When we forecast the future, we run the risk of similar distortions. From where we stand, the present and the immediate future loom large. Anything beyond that loses focus. From the vantage point of the present, it's hard to see past the next step. We end up over-planning for addressing problems we have now. She recommends that you imagine the future you want, and then you work back from there. And ask yourself, how did I get to this future? What decisions did I make? What acts of my will did I enact in order to get to this future? So what do you want your life to look like 6 months from now? Imagine, with this wonderful imagination that God has given you, imagine what you want it to look like, what you might be doing, what your life appears to be at that time. And then work backward from there. What decisions did I make to get to that place? That's a much more effective way to think about the future. And that's called backcasting, but there's also something called postmortem. And that is to imagine, you can imagine a positive future and think about what actions you took to get there. You can also imagine a negative future. Imagine a negative future. What do you really not want your life to look like in 6 months? Work back from there. How did I get to that place and avoid those behaviors? So it's a way you can flex that will that Jesus used to heal the blind man, or the leper. And this goes, I think, for our society. If only we could imagine what the world would look like in 5 years. If we could, what would the world look like in 5 years without the homeless problem we have? What would our cities look like? And how can we work back from there and say, how did we get to that place? I think our cities would be better. Our people would be housed more effectively and efficiently. It's just a matter of that will to do it. I hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful week. Bless you.